I'm Matthew Stahl. Welcome to the fourth episode of The Propaganda Review, where I analyze modern propaganda material and try to get to the truth of the story. In this episode, I'll discuss the U.S. Department of Defense's current efforts to improve its image and advertise enlistment to young people, and whether it's actually what gets people recruited. During the late 90s, the U.S. Army must have noticed games like GoldenEye 007, Metal Gear Solid, and Rainbow Six gaining immense popularity in the video game industry by putting players in the control of military action heroes, and they probably saw a huge opportunity. The Army's chief economist, Casey Wardinsky, proposed, quote, using computer game technology to provide the public a virtual soldier experience that was engaging, informative, and entertaining. Put in more blunt terms, a completely free-to-play video game that would serve as a recruitment tool. This game would take on the title America's Army, and the Army does officially refer to it as a recruitment tool and propaganda. It's not hiding it, but for a lot of people that doesn't matter, right? It was released in 2002, directly in the wake of 9/11, so most Americans had a very favorable view towards the military. Everyone knew that AA was propaganda, but did the kids who played it really care? They probably saw it as an accessible way to experience and understand what they had constantly heard about on the news, the invasion of Afghanistan. Now, an interesting fact about America's Army is that it has a multiplayer mode. And in many multiplayer military games, you're sort of randomly assigned a nation to fight for. Like in Battlefield, you might be assigned to China, Russia, or the US. And it doesn't really matter, right? Well, America's Army made that very important. Interestingly, you always see yourself and your own team as the US Army, and the enemies are just a generic enemy, but they also see themselves as the US Army. Essentially, you are always the good guys. Now, the popularity of America's Army didn't last very long. Call of Duty ultimately became the dominant first-person shooter franchise of the 2000s and 2010s. Even today, annual COD releases sell very well. Soon enough, COD becomes a new source of propaganda for the US military. The devs are known to regularly consult with DoD personnel during their development cycles. This isn't to say that COD is always a direct mouthpiece of the state, though. Modern Warfare 2 notably got into hot water in 2009 for the scene titled No Russian. Here the player controls a CIA agent who participates in the mass killing of civilians at an airport. The No Russian scene, though, and its view into the true nature of violence, is the exception, not the rule. COD has known since not to make its players too uncomfortable with their own country. In the 2019 release, Modern Warfare, a mission in the game is directly inspired by the real place and event known as the Highway of Death. Here's how it's introduced in the game.
If they try to escape to the mountains, there is only one road, Tariq al-Maut, the Highway of Death. The Russians bombed it during the invasion, killing the people trying to escape.
In reality, the Highway of Death was bombed by the American, British, Canadian, and French forces. The convoy was a mix of fleeing Iraqi soldiers and civilians, and more than 1,400 vehicles were destroyed. Casualties were well into the thousands. Russia played no part. The U.S. is always the good guys. Since the abandonment of America's Army as a propaganda tool, the military has shifted focus towards streaming and esports. Military sports are nothing unique for national militaries. However, the US is quite special for creating esports teams for the major 6 branches. Turns out, many people in the military are huge gamers. No idea why that could be. Anyways, while it's definitely important to provide activities for soldiers to do, the DoD also uses these teams as part of its recruitment strategy. You know, it's one of the ways that the military likes to advertise itself as not being about like guns and deployment all the time and war, you know. The soldiers don't really want to go to war. So let's really talk about all the amenities at the bases and the various activities that you can participate in. These military bases are almost turning into college campuses, just with a bunch of guns as well. The various branches have also used sponsorship deals and ad campaigns to reach young minds on YouTube and Twitch.
The Marine Corps invited me to travel across the country for a promotion. Go Army gave me the opportunity to experience things firsthand.
Well, today I'm out here at Cannon Air Force Base to teach you about the mission, the crew, and what it's like to experience firing the weapons myself.
Men out, left, right. This is just like Call of Duty, guys. Enemy AC-134!
I'm not kidding, it seriously was.
So this conversation about military advertising is all well and good, but how much should we even care? Is the propaganda actually what pushes people to enlist? Or is it really something else? Long ago, the Department of War created a series of propaganda films called Why We Fight, to help soldiers and the public understand why the US needed to intervene in World War II. Today, I'd say all this propaganda from the DoD is telling us more about how we fight. It's about the guns, the planes, the experience of being a soldier. Young people, especially gamers, are more motivated by simply engaging in violence, not for any specific cause. I myself can attest to how cool it would probably feel to shoot a real gun, just like in all my favorite games, but like for real. And those potential recruits can rest assured that in every piece of media which entertains them with the violent fantasy, the US is always the good guy. Now, how today do we answer the question, why we fight? Well, I'm currently in high school, and a few of my peers are enlisting. I've spoken with them, and today, well, it's more of a deal. The free college tuition, the financial benefits, the low risk, and much, much more. You see, financial stability is the real reason. In an economic system where our continued existence has some uncertainty, that assurance is really appealing. As for the propaganda, well, that's merely the cherry on top.